Hello, happy Monday. I'm excited for today. We are going to dive into some information on mold and mycotoxins and some of the sneaky signs that you might be living in mold. And we've done a lot of different podcasts on mold, how to keep your home, in a good environment in terms of air quality, checking your ducts, utilizing different
Mhm.
dehumidifiers and lights and things like that at the AC unit. But if you're somebody who's going through gut healing protocols, you're struggling with gut issues, you are struggling with hormonal imbalances, chronic fatigue syndrome, a variety of health issues, we want to kind of talk a little bit about how mold might be the missing piece here. And you don't have to be in an environment where you are seeing black mold, where you are smelling mold or must, mildew type, right? You could also be in a brand new home. And I know for many people, they don't want to hear that, but mold is sneaky and it can grow in a lot of places, including mattresses, couches, leather, a variety of types of different fabric, carpet, right? It could be in your ceiling tiles, it could be in your flooring, underneath your floor, it could be a variety of places. And so, if this is you, the thing that I'm going to recommend first and foremost, that's a free resource for you, is go to Dr. Jill Krista's website. She's got a mold mycotoxin questionnaire, and you can go through the symptoms there and rank yourself. And it gives you the probability or likelihood that maybe this is part of your picture, because there's a lot of symptoms associated with mold and mycotoxin illness that are also associated with many other types of, imbalances in the body as well. And so as we go through this, when you hear some of this information, you're like, mold, 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 mycotoxins, it's me, that's me, that's me. You check the box, start to look at your environment. We partner with a company called Immunolytics, which is a great company that you can buy very affordable plates and swabs for your home. So you can swab your washing machine. You can swab any areas maybe in your shower that you are seeing what looks to be maybe like black mold. You can swab your ventilation system, your air ducts, and then you can also utilize the different plates that they have and set them in the environment that you spend the most time. So is it that your office? Is it your bedroom, your car, things like that? Especially for people who drive a lot to and from work and you live in these environments that are very humid. I mean, mold commonly grows in mold dark places, but it can grow in dry environments as well. I've seen this a lot for people who live in the desert even, and they're like, I had to have a whole remediation of my home, or we thought we got it all. Oh, wow, here's a total tox report showing many different types. The body is still sequestering. We didn't get it all. So I think that it's really, really important that you kind of pay attention to this, get curious. And, we're talking here today about mycotoxins, which are the invisible spores.
Mhm.
I also want to say as we head into this, please never, ever address mold that you are seeing visibly without proper equipment to protect yourself, and do not bleach it. Bleach is going to piss that mold off. It's going to end up releasing more mycotoxins into the environment. And these mycotoxins are what are harming your health. They are odorless and colorless typically. And so you're inhaling them, you're breathing them in. And these are the things that can really place a big burden on your body. I mean, we look at different labs to kind of catch certain things and point us in this direction. We use the different questionnaires, but we also go off signs and symptoms. So I'm going to rattle off a few here, and then we're going to get into why they're so dangerous. So some common signs and symptoms: chronic sinus issues, respiratory issues. So this is going to be allergies, asthma, chronic sinus infections, fatigue, chronic fatigue, feeling like you've slept 4 hours when you've slept 9 hours, brain fog, headaches, migraines, low appetite, or nausea. You can have a lot of dry voice or hoarse voice, right? Losing your voice, itchy skin, chemical sensitivities. You could also be dealing with edema, water retention, high blood pressure, chest pains, muscle weakness or cramps, exercise intolerance, frequent infections. You're doing all the things and you're like, man, why do I constantly feel like I'm getting sick, repeatedly getting sick? Frequent urination, which may over time become like low urine output from low kidney function. And then I'm going to say here too, when we think about mold and mycotoxins, digestive issues, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, cramping, abdominal pain. And again, things that are just recurring, right? You do a gut protocol, you feel better, boom, you relapse. You have a lot of imbalances with your hormones, more on the estrogen dominant side. This is where we're going to look at something called beta glucuronidase that's recirculating estrogen and estrogen chemicals throughout the gut microbiome. Maybe you're not seeing it on labs overtly, but you aren't losing weight and you have all the symptoms and signs of estrogen dominance, even though estrogen is not again, overtly high. This is something where when we look at stool testing, we're seeing crazy high levels of this beta glucuronidase. And then when we look at mycotoxins, there's specific ones that are estrogen mimicking and throw off your hormones as well. So there's a lot here, right? And again, not everything is mycotoxins for everyone, but these can really do harm to the body, and it might be a missing piece.
Yeah. So the reason that mold can be so dangerous is because they aren't like a bacteria that you can kill off with an antibiotic. They aren't a toxin that you're just like sweating out when you exercise or go in a sauna. You can't flush them with water. They bypass the liver's normal detox abilities. They inflame specifically like the brain and the nervous system, which is why people have such chronic fatigue on them and why you feel like you can't function, like brain fog, all of the things. And they disrupt the metabolism of hormones, like Liz was just talking about with the beta glucuronidase and the estrogen. A lot of them are estrogen mimicking. And so you get estrogen dominant type situations with them, weaken the immune system. And a lot of people that unfortunately deal with mold related issues typically already have somewhat of a weakened immune system, and that's what exacerbates honestly the symptoms that you're experiencing. They definitely affect the gut and the gut barrier, leaky gut, food sensitivities, all of the things that people often deal with. And the problem is that some people are not reactive to mold infections. And so it's about 20% of the population that are very reactive to mold, and that when you're living in mold, if you have other people in your family that are not reactive, you seem like the crazy person because you're dealing with all of these symptoms, like can be debilitating symptoms for a lot of people, and other people in the household are completely fine. And so it's very hard to get everyone on board in terms of understanding and approach because again, a lot of people feel like they shouldn't even talk about it because it's like, well, no one else in my house is dealing with it, so I don't want to be that person, right? But it is unfortunately like your body shuts down fast, and genetics play a role here in terms of detoxification abilities and autophagy abilities, nutrient status. Like I talked about, if your immune system is really suppressed already and then you get into a moldy environment, it becomes a much bigger problem. Liver and detoxification abilities, the burden on the liver, all of those things play a pretty big role here. And so it's frustrating for people that are dealing with it. Women tend to be a little bit more affected only because we have a slightly different makeup of the immune system. We deal with a lot more chronic based things. Men deal with a little bit more acute based things. So yeah, it's just a really hard situation to be in, and it's why mold and mycotoxins are such a challenging problem to be faced with because it's not the typical things that you go like address them with. It's usually a lot of binders. It's getting out of the environment and figuring out, is it something in your environment? Like when we do mold and mycotoxin testing, there are certain things that you see on tests with levels and amounts and types that can indicate whether you're still living in it or not. Because if you're living in it and you're trying to go about eradication or detoxification of the mold, you're going to have a real hard time.
Yeah, it's going to be a long process. If you have to stay in your environment, the best thing that you can do is support your drainage and detox pathways, support your immune system calming down so you're not, again, sequestering these things and overreacting. Because when the immune system overreacts, we generally just store it. So 4 sneaky signs. And these are going to surprise you guys, but I think they're so good. And this is why we had to do this podcast. Number 1, you feel hungover, but you didn't drink any alcohol. So you wake up feeling groggy, foggy, headachy, maybe even nauseous. You feel like you've got hit by a truck, right? You didn't sleep, but yeah, you slept 8 or 9 hours. And this is because, as Becca was talking about, mold and mycotoxins, they cross the blood-brain barrier. They heavily impact our detoxification pathways. And this can also disrupt our sleep cycles and circadian rhythm. So if you're waking up puffy, tired, and foggy, you need to look at mold and mycotoxins. We like the total tox test, or there's a serum blood test that we do. Ideally, you do both together, but financially and depending upon where you are, we can do one or the other. Number 2 is that symptoms randomly come and go. So this is everything from histamine reactions as well. So rashes, itching, anxiety, shortness of breath, or even ringing in your ears. Now, we also have talked about ringing in the ears and itchiness of the ears being associated with perimenopause. So we're not saying that is, this, but we're thinking is this part of the picture for this person, right? You think maybe you're going nuts, but it's really inflammation that's cycling through. Mold flares can also happen when you get heavily stressed, just like histamine reactions can happen when you get heavily stressed, or when you're going through a time of estrogen dominance, different parts of your cycle, you notice you're more reactive to histamine. But histamine builds up in the body, and that is part of, what is going on here, because your body can't detoxify well, it can't break down the histamine because it doesn't have enough DAO enzyme. So sometimes we'll see different nutrients there can support quercetin as well. But when you think about these mycotoxins, Becca mentioned binders, various binders like activated charcoal, NAC. We can use a variety of combination binders as well. So spore-based probiotics, that can work for things. Clays, that can work for things, right? We can do detox baths. Kind of depends upon what the specific mycotoxin is as to what binder we're going to go in and utilize. But keep in mind, when you're going through seasons of high humidity, if you notice that you're reactive, then those are times that I would pull in some binders. Couple here just for very generic purposes. You could utilize something like a Quicksilver ultra sensitive binder. That's kind of a nice blend. And I would also throw in something like a calcium diglucarate, especially if you are more on that estrogen dominant side, feeling like, hey, maybe baby glucuronidase is high, or my estrobolome, the levels there are high. Calcium diglucarate works very, very well. It's cheap, it's affordable. It's something you could try on your own. Test and try. It's not going to harm.
Yep.
Number 3, you react to everything. So we see this a lot with other liver burden too. So I don't want to just play the blame game here,
Yeah.
right? But if you are somebody who's very sensitive to perfume, candles, cleaning supplies, you're getting that nausea, headache. This is again where we're going to look to the liver. What's going on with your liver, your drainage and detox pathways? Becca has dealt with this before in terms of even like car rides, right? And being
Yeah.
nauseous with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that if people have really low histamine tolerance, mold and mycotoxin definitely exacerbate mast cell activation, and that will lead to higher histamine levels in the body. Some people do not process those very well. I'm one of those people. It has a lot to do with neurotransmitter and methylation genetic predisposition. So if you have poor methylation genetics, which we see with our genetics testing, it's not just MTHFR. That is one of many genes that affect methylation. But also people can have blocks in COMT, they can have blocks in MAOA. These are all basically how your neurotransmitters can detoxify and break down and eliminate through the body. And also histamine is included in that. And so that's MAOB usually on the genetics testing. And so if you have blocks in these areas, and you maybe also have blocks in abilities to create NAC and glutathione within the body and break down, homocysteine and methionine and all of these different things, you're going to struggle with breaking down toxins, perfumes, things that you're breathing in chemicals wise. Histamine gets highly produced in car sickness and in, motion sickness and seasickness, all of these different things. So a lot of that also stems from the gut and foods that you're intaking, because the gut, when it is not healthy, will produce higher levels of histamine. There are certain bacteria that you can basically have within the gut when your gut is not optimally balanced that will overproduce histamine. And so you do kind of have this threshold ultimately, whether it's genetic, whether it's self-imposed from what you're exposing yourself to. But you basically, when you are living in mold and mycotoxin environments, you are going to be tipped over that edge very easily. You are going to have this very low threshold, and you are going to be irritated by things when it seems like it'd be nothing for someone else, right? And so you walk into a house that has Glade plugins all over the place and you have a headache. To me, yes, I don't want those in the house, but now I'm in a place where like, I'm not going to immediately have this headache or nauseousness or reactivity to it. Is it a problem? Do I want to get it out? Yes, I don't want these high amounts of perfumes, these, non-organic candles, these Bath and Body Works things all over myself. But like, I am now in a place where my threshold is a lot more improved because of the functional work I have done on the body and lowering my histamine load and lowering my inflammatory load in the body. So when you're living in it, you basically have this really low threshold.
Yep.
Yep.
Last one here, last but not least, your protocols aren't working. So maybe you've done SIBO protocols, right? You've done eradication protocols, parasite cleansing. Maybe you're addressing candida, which is a type of mold because it's a fungus. And you've eliminated anything and everything from your diet that you possibly can, and you're not seeing the improvement that you want, or things have relapsed. You might feel better when you're doing those protocols because of the herbs. So in nature, we look at different herbs that are very broad spectrum, right? So we might have an antifungal benefit of something that you're utilizing to address bacteria, other types of bacteria or parasites. But when you stop that, the symptoms come back. Mold damages the gut lining. So we talked about this earlier. It weakens the immune system. It triggers that histamine overload. And if you have a compromised gut lining, things that you're ingesting are getting into the bloodstream, creating a chemical warfare and an immunological response that's just continuous. You're probably going to struggle and, relapse with some of these things. So this is really where we have to use our strategic thinking and look at each bio individual client to say, hey, what might be going on? And that questionnaire I mentioned earlier from Dr. Jill Krista, just go to her website and you can get it free. You can download it. That's one thing that I will have my clients do. And if we score high, then we're going to say, okay, this is something that we might want to look at. And by the way, the last thing I want to say here is that it doesn't have to be a current exposure. Your body can be sequestering things from past exposures. So if you lived in mold 5 years ago and you got out of it, maybe that's something that's still lingering. Your body hasn't been able to properly detoxify it. Or you brought your mattress with you that was also in that moldy environment and you're sleeping on that mattress every night. You're continuously being exposed. So it's not the house itself structurally, but it's the items that you brought with you. So there's a lot of things for us to look at. One thing I do like about the Total Tox is it also shows us environmental factors as well as heavy metals. And so a lot of this kind of goes hand in hand when we look at that toxic burden on your body. But those are 4 signs. So just to wrap this up, number 1, you feel hungover, but you didn't drink. Number 2, you have random symptoms that come and go. Number 3, you react to everything. And number 4, your protocols aren't working.